Okie dokie, what's up, guys? Welcome back again, number 7 here, Back and Bone Show. This one is a bit of a doozy. This was day 1 back from the Santa Cruz vacation. We got like a little bit of a before and after contrast for you guys to that effect. And you can hear it in my voice. I am shot out. It was rough. So... I think we got some good content on this one. We talked about some old Nickelodeon game shows that we wanted to be on. A good breakdown of the movie Troll 2, a classic, one of the greatest worst movies of all time. Steroids. Plus and minuses involved with testosterone replacement therapy and what the new USADA rules really, how that really affects the careers of people, good and bad. But tune in, take it slow, take it easy, and enjoy the show.
Turns all your bad feelings into good feelings. It's a nightmare.
An Uzi? I'm not from South Central Los fucking Angeles. I didn't come here to shoot 20 black 10-year-olds in a fucking driveway. I want a normal gun for a normal person.
Whatever you're reaching for better be a sandwich, because you're gonna have to eat it.
You thought he was white before? You should see that sucking man.
I'll use small words that you'll be sure to understand.
So, another day in the office for the Back and Bone Show. We just got done fiddling around with the mics and figuring out just what the problem is with them. But today they're working.
Indeed.
Welcome to the show.
How's everybody doing out there? How's your morning going? We're here in the morning.
Well, it's morning for us. I don't know what it is for you. You could be listening to this any time of day.
We might be a little low energy today, but we're gonna try to pump the volume up for you guys.
Oh yeah. I just got back from a big family vacation in Santa Cruz, and for those of you who don't know my family, I'm like the tamest one. So going on a family vacation with them is like touring with a rock band or something. Like
It's
there's
like the,
cocaine and hookers and
It's like the Motley Crue 1984
yeah, exactly.
tour.
Like there's somebody drinking heroin out of a fire hose in the corner. And
It's like you know that scene, that really funny scene in Wet Hot American Summer where they take a trip into town?
What happened on that scene? I don't remember.
There's a scene where they're like, "Hey, we're gonna take a ride into town." They're like, "Can we hitch a ride with you?" She's like, "Oh, all right." And then they go into town and they just like, they start off by buying weed, and then they like buy some coke, and then they do heroin, and then it's playing that Journey song in the background, the one where it's like, I'm pretty sure that's what's playing, the song where it's like, it sounds like how does that song go? I can't believe I'm forgetting this. It sounds like a car commercial.
Oh, Any Way You Want It?
Yeah, I think that's playing in the background as they're...
That definitely sounds like a car commercial, that song.
It's like a really funny song.
Do you want a taller table for your mic? Because
No,
it looks
I'm fine.
like you got a little distance from it.
Yeah, I'm fine.
All right. Did you ever watch the show or just the movie?
I watched both shows, so
Both?
I've seen them all.
Yeah, when they had the new season come out, like
Yeah,
it was great. Like
it was
thought
pretty
super
funny.
Yeah.
Wet Hot American Summer, I think I think back when the first one came out in 2001, it was very. I remember it was like panned at the time. Like critics hated it.
Well, it was very edgy. It was a very like it.
I just don't think that style of humor had even like been developed yet. Like that was a new style of humor.
Yeah, but everyone on it was so fucking funny.
Yeah,
Everybody,
that whole show is so funny. Paul Rudd's character, I think, is the funniest. He kills me.
Where he's like the bad boy guy. He's like, God.
There's one line in that movie that I love, where like he's making out with his girlfriend, and then she's like, she's asking him about something, and she's like, "Hey, she's asking him like, "Hey, you're supposed to be there, right?" And he's like, "What? Whatever. Fuck you."
Yeah.
And then he
It's
goes,
about
"Hey,
something totally like innocuous. She's just like,
Yeah.
"Aren't you gonna go take care of this?" And he's all, "What? Fuck you, all right?"
Yeah. And then he like kisses her, and he's like, "Hey, JJ, save me a waffle, man." It's just like, I don't know why I thought that line was so funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, even when they came back and did it for the TV series, I thought it was really funny how they had the TV series take place like 10 years before. It was a prequel, but they all looked like super old.
Well, yeah, they played all the same characters. They looked younger, and then they did but they just put like wigs and shit on them. But they all had these like over 40 bodies and stuff,
Yeah, that's
because
what I was
you
gonna
could see
say.
them and they're dressed in the tight like 70s clothes and shit.
Some of them
like,
aged very poorly. Some of them aged really good though. The one, what's his name? The guy, he's like the main character in the show. He has longer hair. He aged really bad because he gained like a bunch of weight.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
I remember when I first saw it, I was like,
And he looked super old. Like his face kind of like curled in on itself.
yeah, he looked like a 50-year-old man. He's the guy who like, I think he wrote that show. He like created that whole thing.
But he looked so funny. Like it made it so
That's
perfect
what I was gonna
how
say.
funny
It actually,
he looked.
so the first episode in, I was like, "Oh, come on, man! You can lose some weight for the show. Like, at least try to." But then I realized I was like, "No, that's the point. Like,
Yeah,
it's hilarious.
it's so
Like, he
much
looks
better.
horrible. Like, he looks nothing like a teenager."
Like Paul Rudd looked exactly the same.
Yeah, Paul Rudd just does not
lit-
age.
Yeah, he just looked like the same kid that he was on the movie with.
Well,
But,
Paul Rudd was one of those guys who, back in the '90s when he was starring in movies, like when he was in Clueless and Halloween, and he looked very young for his age even then. When he was in his 20s, he looked like a teenager.
Yeah.
So like he just kind of reverse ages. I feel like
Right, he just keeps getting younger.
he's
no
like
matter
50
what he does.
now. So he's like 50 now, but he looks like he
Yeah.
could pass for like
He
mid 30s.
Yeah, he could pass for mid-30s for sure. Like
Yeah.
maybe it's just the movie makeup. I don't know. I've never seen him in person.
No,
So-
I don't think. Well, that's true. You're right. Yeah, because sometimes you'll see people in person and they don't look anything.
Well,
like what you think.
to be honest, most of the time when you see someone who's on TV in person, they aren't really that special looking. Like
No.
there's, my cousin described it when she was like, she saw Jennifer Lopez in person, and
Yeah.
she was like, she was such a tremendously beautiful person that she like fucking glowed. Like there was no way that she was not going to be a celebrity just by
Right.
looking at her. Then there's like a lot of people that you run into and you're just like, whew. Keep it in front of a camera. Keep the makeup on.
Well, you do
and
have
like,
those. You do have those. What do you know? Hollywood like marvels, like those. There are those rare cases where, yeah, just exactly what you said. They're like too pretty not to be a star, like a Jennifer Lopez or like Halle Berry. Mm-hmm. You know, Halle Berry is like in her 50s now, and she looks great. Like she's,
Yeah.
you know, you do have some like
she's
that.
just as tight as ever.
John Stamos.
That John
Just as tight as
Stamos.
ever.
Mario Lopez, still a six-pack
Yeah,
on that
dude,
guy.
Mario
Like,
Lopez, man. Speaking of aging good,
Yeah.
yeah, he looks fucking awesome.
he looks exactly like he did in the early 90s. Like,
Pretty much, yeah.
Like,
He
I
really does.
literally don't think he's aged a day. Or he's got the best makeup artist in the business.
No, I think I think he just ages really good. He's got that like olive tone
Well,
skin, and
You know
just
what it
doesn't
is?
wrinkle.
It's that that whole Latin thing. Like,
Yeah.
there's something about them, like, the really beautiful Latin people never get old. It's like their superpower.
No, it's true.
Yeah.
It's the Latin and then the lighter skinned black people.
Mm-hmm.
So Halle Berry, Lenny Kravitz.
Mm-hmm.
Lenny Kravitz, man.
Kravitz.
Lenny Kravitz, it's like almost 60, I think.
Yeah. He looks
And you
exactly
would
the same.
Never guess it. I'm gonna fact check that.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Lenny Kravitz is pushing 60.
Yeah, Lenny Kravitz is getting pretty old, but
But he looks awesome.
yeah, he looks great.
And well, his wife, the woman who he was married to, Lisa Bonet, she kind of
Yeah.
has a similar skin tone, and
You
their
know, Lisa-
daughter looks really good.
Lisa Bonet, she's married to Jason Momoa
Jason
now.
Momoa, yeah.
You know,
Lenny Kravitz is 53.
Lisa
This
Bo-
fucking guy looks like he doesn't even have a wrinkle on his fucking forehead. This
What
guy doesn't
is he?
even have
He's
a crow's
53,
foot.
you said?
He's 53.
Not a wrinkle.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. It's very impressive.
Wow. So what? Yeah, Lisa Bonet. She's look at this picture of him. This is from 2013. So this is only 5 years ago.
Jesus Christ.
It's insane.
I mean, yeah, we all saw him on Hunger Games. Not that I'm proud to admit I watched that.
So yeah, she's married to Jason Momoa.
Yeah, I read a little.
Yeah.
I read a little like People News thing where he was just like, I knew from the first time I saw the Cosby Show that someday I'd marry Lisa Bonet.
No way. That's crazy. Can you imagine what a weird feeling that must be to
actually achieve celebrity status and be able to marry of course that's what Ashton Kutcher was doing with
Demi Moore.
With Demi Moore, because I mean it's not like she aged well.
Yeah, no. And you know what's weird too? Well, she had a weird like resurgence because she was in that Charlie's Angels sequel, and like nobody had heard from her for a while. But then she did that movie, and she had that bikini scene, and people were like, "Dang, Demi Moore looks really good." But then from there, it was all downhill.
To be honest, I personally never found her attractive. Demi Moore just wasn't my thing. But when I see her as an old woman, and people tell me how hot she is. Yeah, that's where I have a tough time following.
Demi Moore, I would put her in the cat. Yeah, she was never like one of my favorites, but she did look really, really good in Showgirls. But then again, she's like dancing around in a thong, and she got all like in really good shape for that role.
What's her name though?
Oh wait, no, not Showgirls. Was it Showgirls?
I don't know, because I never watched Showgirls. She did
the other stripper movie.
But
Showgirls was the one with the girl from Saved by the Bell.
Yeah, and she was fucking DEFCON 4. I remember I put something on one time, and instead of the movie that I was trying to watch, Showgirls came on, and I was like, who the fuck is this?
Yeah, she went hard for that role. You could tell that was the role where she probably thought that she was going to, that was going to be like her breakout role. She was going to get an Oscar maybe.
It should have been, just based on looks alone. It doesn't matter what shitty movie she was doing. Like, she should have gotten that. Like, that movie was big enough to get her mass attention. Yeah. And she's one of those people who is just, everything else aside, she's just good looking enough to be put in A-lister movies. Yeah,
but that movie was did you watch it all the way through?
No. As I mentioned just a moment ago, I watched like the first 10 minutes of it. She was super hot, not hot enough to get me to watch the whole movie.
Yeah, that was a very silly movie.
Well, it was as we talked about before, it's a Paul Verhoeven movie, isn't it? Yeah, which is
They had some hilarious scenes in that movie though. Like some of the sex scenes are so. There's a scene where she bangs.
It's like super awkward, right? There's like a really awkward sex scene.
There's a scene where she like spanks Kyle MacLachlan like bare-assed, I think. Mm-hmm. There's also a scene where like they're boning in the pool, and
there's a scene where she fights Arnold Schwarzenegger in the living room. No.
So it was a striptease that Demi Moore was in, and pulled up some photos here. If you've never seen striptease, she looked great in striptease. If you guys haven't seen striptease, guys, don't watch the whole movie. Just go online and watch a pirated compilation of all the nude scenes. That's or what I would recommend.
Look up the nude, or just look up the nude pictures. You can really get the gist of it.
The photos are good too, but the videos are also great. I'd go with some videos as well.
Her boobs look really great. Her body looks very tight and everything. I particularly just don't like her face. She just has this weird, like, scrunched up, like, wrongly shaped face to me. I don't know what it is about it, but
I guess she grew up. I remember, like, I don't know where I heard this or saw this, but I heard that she grew up like really, really poor, like in a trailer park or something. Mm-hmm. And she just like scratched and clawed her way out of it.
never got itself corrected from the hard life.
Basically, what I'm trying to say is, if you grow up in a trailer park, your face is going to be ruined.
She was never able to correct the damage growing up in a trailer park did to her face.
Yes. Well, enough about Demi Moore.
Yeah.
Let's talk about one. You know what I wanted to talk about was one of the suggested topics that we had from our listeners. Mm-hmm. And I don't even remember who suggested it, but it was like which children's game show.
The Nickelodeon game shows. I've been meaning to talk about this one for a couple podcasts now. Now my given was always the one I like to watch the most was always Legends of the Hidden Temple.
Yeah.
I thought it was just really cool. I was like, none of those things look super hard. I'm pretty sure I could handle all these stunts, but I also like the idea of playing in a what's it called, in like an Indiana Jones style world for a little bit.
Legends of the Hidden Temple was a really smart show because they were able to combine like the action element with the fantasy element.
Which for a bunch of kids to watch, it was very exciting.
Yeah, because even for somebody like whether you were into like sports and stuff like that, which I wasn't as a kid, or you were into action adventure stuff, they were gonna hook you in. So they would, those of you that don't know, they had a big talking tribal statue head called Olmec.
Olmec,
who would tell you a story basically, and it was kind of like a history lesson. Not necessarily. That's probably being a little too.
That's probably being too kind.
Yeah, it was more like myths.
Yeah.
Like they would tell you a myth of some sort.
But that's still fun though. Like you may not be learning actual history, but they would
pepper in a little bit of actual history.
But you're getting like these cultural myths and legends, and that's worth getting into as well.
Yeah, and they had teams. I always remember I really liked my favorite color was purple, so I remember I liked the purple monkeys. I think they were monkeys, right?
Yeah, I think it was purple monkeys.
They had like the blue iguanas.
It's, I meant to watch a couple episodes before we actually talked about this, just to like refresh my memory of it, but I kind of I did a little looking up. But the other one I remember looking into was the other one I might have really wanted to be on was what is it called? I can't remember the name of it. But
was it Guts?
No, it was the one where you get to stand next to Summer Sanders the whole time.
Oh, that was
everybody wanted to be on that one.
Yeah, well, Summer Sanders was super hot,
yeah,
and everybody had a crush on her.
Everyone who I ever knew watching Nickelodeon shows wanted to be on that show because we were all going to make a move on Summer Sanders.
She's still, Summer Sanders. I just pulled up Summer Sanders.
She's still banging. Like
she's 45. She's legit too. Holy shit. She has all kinds of medals in the Olympics. Bunch of golds. Yeah. Yeah, she's got golds all over the place.
Summer Sanders is an Olympian? I didn't even fucking know that.
Olympic swimmer. Yep.
So it's very impressive,
Summer Sanders, was it called What Would You... No, that's not what it was called. The fuck was that show called? Somebody out there is like screaming like, you fucking idiots. Figure It Out.
Figure It Out was the one.
Yeah, Figure It Out was good, but I remember always getting really pissed off at the end. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
I just kind of never gave a shit about the show. It really does. It didn't really... It wasn't that interesting.
All right, well, what I didn't like about the show is I remember it was like Figure It Out, and then wouldn't like they would have a kid at the end with a special talent or something like that, and you'd have to like guess their talent. Wasn't that the premise of the show?
Well, basically? they had the celebrity, like the kids on the show. I think that was it. Hold on. The kids who got brought onto the show had like a secret talent. They'd be like, I could whistle out of my ears, or like when I fart, it smells like bubble gum, and they would be like something stupid like that. And the celebrity panel, they would have to ask yes or no questions.
Right.
So it'd be like 20 questions. Basically, was it.
But they would have to guess the kid. That would all lead to them figuring out the kid's talent.
Yeah.
And, well, here's what I remember getting annoyed by, is, like, some of the talents that these kids supposedly... Like, they weren't even... You couldn't even call them talents. Like, you could tell they ran out of talents very quickly. Because some of the kids they would have on there would just do the stupidest... Like, they would have a kid on there. They'd be like, what's your talent? And the kid would have, like, some kind of elaborate hamster farm. Or, like, it would be something stupid where you're like, that's not a talent. That's just, like, something that you've accumulated. That's not even anything.
That's a collection, you asshole.
Yeah,
not a talent.
They would do that all the time. But I remember there was a lot of fuckery on that show in that regard. But I remember, they did alternate the cast. And they had... The one that I remembered very vividly, because he was on there all the time, was the kid from Pete and Pete.
Yeah. And that girl from All That.
Lori Beth Denver.
Which, even as a kid, All That I've found to be like a completely not funny sketch comedy show. Like, it was always rough to watch.
I agree for the most part. However, there was a couple of characters. Michelle Trachtenberg was on there. Mike O'Malley, the guy who hosted Guts, was on there as a guest contestant. There was some characters on all that I did enjoy. What were some of the characters that I enjoyed? Like I really liked what do you call it? I really liked you remember the pizza face guy?
Pizza face.
There was a guy who had like a pizza for a face.
I remember the pizza face guy. I'm trying to get like a visual image of it in my head right now. It's really been a long time because like I said, even as a kid, I didn't watch it much because I just didn't think it was funny. But occasionally I would watch it.
There was a guy named Repairman that I liked. He would go, Repairman, man.
Oh, Repairman, man.
Yeah, but that was a really stupid show.
Was that one of the Keenan and Kel guys?
It was Kel.
It was Kel, yeah. Keenan and Kel. Is he on Saturday Night Live?
Yeah,
now?
he's been on Saturday Night Live for a long time too. He's been on there forever.
Well, he ain't going anywhere else.
No,
he's not good enough to.
He's not even funny on. He's not even funny on set. I don't like to shit on people,
Yeah.
but to me, that guy's just not funny.
Unfortunately, like the place that we're at right now, recording on this podcast, is the place to shit on people. Yeah. I hate to admit to it, but like that's half of what we've got to do is we're letting you people who are listening know who sucks.
Yeah, and if you guys like Kenan Thompson, he sucks. You shouldn't like him. He's not funny.
If you do like him, good for him. It's nice that he has he has a fan. But just know you're the only one.
Yeah, he's Saturday Night. Yeah, he's horrible on Saturday Night Live. I really liked Mad TV when I was growing up.
I liked a couple sketches on Mad TV. Like Stewart was
hilarious.
Like, if you didn't like Stewart, like I don't know what I can do for you.
For some of our listeners who didn't listen to Mad TV or maybe didn't know about Stewart, he was this really absurd like man baby character.
He was that one guy. I can't remember his name.
He's in a bunch of stuff too.
Yeah, he's a very famous actor. Like. Not like an A-lister, but he's famous. Like
he's like a D-lister.
Yeah, you've seen him before.
But he's been in a lot of stuff. But he's really funny. And that skit, he was like a big man baby. And his mom, he had a really funny mom, and she would have babysitters come over to babysit him.
Michael McDonald,
yeah.
One of the 12,000 different Michael McDonalds in the world.
Yeah, there's a lot of Michael McDonalds.
One of the most
that's got to be the most common name.
That may be the single most common name in the world.
I can think of 4 Michael McDonalds off the top of my head. Kickboxer Michael McDonald,
fighter kickboxer Michael McDonald,
UFC fighter Michael McDonald, musician Michael McDonald, actor Michael McDonald. That's 5.
Yeah, that's 5 right off the bat. I'm proud of you, Matt. That was really good.
That was good.
And it's not like you have to really remember really specific details about them. The name is already there. They're all Michael McDonald's.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Stewart was funny. Do you remember there was a Artie Lang character called My Black Mama?
I'm gonna look that up right now.
So I think it was called My Black Mama. And it was like
Artie Lang is one of those great characters. I think you told me about his book. I'm not Horatio Sands or something like that.
No, I think that's somebody else. His book is called Too Fat to Fish.
Oh, there we go.
But no, I'm not Horatio Sands. Maybe he wrote a second. I know he came out with a second book though, and it might have been called that. I'm not sure. But yeah, I think it was called My Black Mama, and like the basically the premise of the skit was that like he somehow, I think he hit an old black woman with his car by accident.
It's the guy from the 7-Up commercials is on it with him.
Yeah. So like he hit an old black woman with his car, and then her soul escaped into his body as a mid-30s white fat man. And like he would repeat all these, like, it would probably be considered racist today.
It would be it would be. He's wearing like traditional African, like like the dress style kind of like overcoat things.
He'd go, I'm gonna break my foot off in your ass. He'd go down to the store and get me some tuna fish. Or a can of tuna. He would say, "Get me a can of tuna."
Get me a can of tuna.
He told a really funny story when I was. That was one thing that was really funny about reading his book is he would tell these. He's like a lifelong drug addict.
That's like his favorite thing to do is drugs.
And when he was filming Mad TV, he was mainly a cocaine addict. So he told all these really funny...
What a surprise.
Shocker.
That cocaine is the drug of choice when you're filming Mad TV.
He told all these really funny stories in his book about these crazy things that he would do while he was addicted to cocaine. And one of the ones was he had a character named... it was a skit called Babe Watch. And it was where he would dress like... he would wear a pig snout, a prosthetic pig snout. Mm-hmm. And it was him running down the beach as like a Baywatch character, but he's a man, half pig.
Baywatch.
So it's a completely absurd premise. And he told this
like
really
Babe the pig, you know.
Yeah, so he tells this really funny story about how when he was addicted to coke, he one time forgot to get his coke before he was filming the skit. So he shows up to the skit and they put his prosthetic on. Okay, he has a pig prosthetic over his nose, so.
It's really hard to do cocaine.
How are you going to do coke?
Covered up.
So he goes to pick up his coke while he's wearing the pig prosthetic, and he said his dealer is just like looking at him like he's crazy. He doesn't even have time to explain to him why he's wearing it. And then he said he was so hard up for coke that he ended up poking nostrils into the pig prosthetic so he could still snort coke through his pig prosthetic. Which I just thought was like such a hilarious story that you that badly needed to get high.
That's amazing.
And I'm pretty sure he said, I might be misquoting this, but I'm pretty sure he said in the book that he was doing this as he was driving. So
he's doing it while he's driving.
So he said that people probably thought he looked insane. The guy wearing a pig prosthetic, shirtless, snorting coke as he's driving his car in LA.
Everybody out there listening, there's an episode of Babe Watch you can watch where he has holes in his prosthetic nose that you can look up, and you know that's the one that he was snorting coke through his mask, his prosthetic nose. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, Mad TV. There was this other one that I remember really vividly. It was called Sex Toy Story.
Okay.
So it was like Toy Story, but the idea was they were all sex toys. So Buzz Lightyear was a brand new, shiny dildo.
Buzz Lightyear?
Yeah, Buzz Lightyear.
I get
and then Woody
I see what you did there.
Woody was like a sex cowboy, so he was wearing like assless chaps and leather. And it was a really funny skit. And then like all the sex toys, like when Buzz Lightyear comes... and whoever the character is using him to pleasure herself, all the other sex toys are getting all jealous, and she has like a toy chest of sex toys. And it's just that's a funny one too. If you guys get a chance, watch Sex Toy Story.
Yeah, a lot like all that. Mad TV, I watched more when I was much younger, and as there was only like a few sketches on it that I really found funny. I think I might have been too young for things like Sex Toy Story to really like connect with me.
No, but even as a young guy, I remember Mad TV being pretty inconsistent.
Yeah.
They would have one sketch, like for every 5 sketches, there would be one that was really funny.
Well, yeah, like for instance, their favorite sketch character in the world, like literally you couldn't watch an episode without getting at least one sketch from this character, Miss Swan,
which would not fly today.
Yeah, no. Well, first of all, it's super racist, but also like it's just in general like
it's really dumb.
The only joke that it is her doing a really bad Asian accent, like a really bad general Asian accent, and it's like to me,
it's a very obvious joke.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no real wit to it.
Yeah, if you think that's funny, that's great. Apparently a lot of people did. Like I still get people, like I'll hear people that in conversation do like Miss Swan references, and I'm just like, oh
it's unbelievable that all these years later, people still remember Miss Swan.
People still remember Miss Swan, still think it was funny, and personally, like I don't know, I have like a thing about like a style of humor that I just don't appreciate is just bad accents.
Yeah.
Like I'm impressed by people who can do accents really well. I actually am very impressed by that. I'm very impressed by like imitational comedians and stuff. Like I think being able to conform your vocal cords to actually be similar to something else can be really funny and it can be really impressive. But just doing a really bad version of that is like nails on a chalkboard to me. It's just like not funny, and I don't get into that.
Or it instantaneously comes off as like that person is trying too hard if it's not good, you know.
Right.
If it's done right, I don't, like you said, I don't mind it. But you know, like there's tons that you'll hear all the time, like Chris Walken and you know, everybody, all comedians do Christopher Walken and Arnold Schwarzenegger and all those.
I think like I kind of bring that up because I recently, like on my Pandora comedy station, for some reason I started getting a lot of impressionist comedians, and I always like that. I'm stoked that that's showing up on my Pandora station, but like, yeah, it's been something I've been getting exposed to a lot. It's really
who's
great.
amazing at doing impressions is Dana Carvey. He was on Howard Stern recently, and Howard Stern, like, he would just like, he would go through and he would just run through
fucking church lady
10 different ones back to back, and it was like amazing, and they're all really, really good.
Isn't Matt Damon super good at impressions too? Like, I think Matt Damon's like crazy good at impressions.
I wasn't aware of that.
No, I haven't seen him do it. I heard third person that Matt Damon is fucking super good at impressions. I need to check that out before I really give you guys any solid opinion there.
Matt Damon.
There's this guy, super not famous guy, James Adomian, that I've been listening to. His comedy is super funny, but like he does all kinds of different people. Let me see, like he does the old guy on Virgil on Tombstone. What's his name?
Virgil. You know what's funny? I've never watched Tombstone.
That is a silly thing.
I know. You know how many times I've heard that from people? Yeah, I've never seen Tombstone.
It is Sam Elliott.
Sam Elliott.
Yeah, he does a Sam Elliott impression. He's like talking about how he wants Sam Elliott to do a commercial for something that isn't necessarily super overtly masculine. He's doing like, beef, it's what's for dinner tonight.
For those of you that don't know, Sam Elliott is he's from he was in The Big Lebowski. He played the cowboy. He was also in Roadhouse. You remember Roadhouse?
Dude,
Patrick Swayze.
He was what's his name?
He was like his mentor.
He's all, we need the best. He's all, I'm not the best. Whoever Sam Elliott's character is the best.
He played Wade Garrett in Roadhouse.
Garrett. He says Garrett's the best.
So Wade Garrett, and then Patrick Swayze. What is Patrick Swayze's name in that movie? Oh, James Dalton. Dalton.
If you guys haven't seen Roadhouse, or if you grew up and watched it on like the USA channel or anything, you have absolutely got to watch an unedited version of the movie.
Yeah.
Don't worry. It doesn't hold up over time. It's not really that good to go back and watch. I love it, but I'm a dork for action movies.
Yeah.
But the one scene, you know what I'm talking about,
The hospital
right?
scene?
No. The scene where he's fighting that guy in the woods.
Oh, they end up in the water and stuff?
Yeah, they're out by the water, and he's fighting this guy who works for... he's fighting this guy who works for like the villain, who's just like a rich guy. He's like a car dealership, owns like a car dealership or something. Like,
yeah,
he's like, I used to fuck guys like you in prison.
Yeah, that's what he tells him. I used to fuck guys like you in prison. Yeah,
probably the funniest line, and he says it with absolute seriousness. Like, you've got to see this guy.
Oh yeah,
say
no,
it.
you could tell that when they made that movie, the director or whoever, the writer, they thought that
that's
line
a
was going to
hard
kill
line.
it, and they did not realize it was not going to sound how they anticipated at all. Yeah, that movie is full of really stupid lines. Like, there's a scene in
well, they play out this whole overall feel like it's almost like they invented this world where bouncers, it's like a John Wick style world where bouncers are like super, like they're this next level thing. Like, it takes this advanced skill to be a bouncer at a bar, and they're all like special skilled individuals. Like, if you're a bouncer, that means something in this world.
Yeah, they're and Patrick Swayze is like, he's like not a big dude, And
No.
but they make him like a karate expert once again. Kind of ties back into our first podcast where we were talking about people's complete lack of understanding regarding martial arts.
Well, he's a dancer, you know, so he can throw those legs up and do karate-looking things.
Patrick Swayze, I love him in this movie though. He's perfect for this role. If anybody was born to play that role, it was Patrick Swayze. There's a scene in the hospital where after he got stabbed, and the lady is like reading over his
my
medical
favorite.
report. She's reading over his medical report, and he's got like 50 stab wounds and a crazy amount of stitches. And she's talking about pain, and Patrick Swayze goes, "Pain don't hurt.
Pain don't hurt.
Pain don't hurt. Pain don't hurt.
Pain don't hurt, guys. If you take anything away from today's lesson,
Pain
it's
don't hurt.
I used to fuck guys like you in prison, and pain don't hurt."
Yeah, it's Roadhouse kind of became a cult classic over time because I remember first watching that movie when I was like 12.
Well, I think
And-
it got a big resurgence from Family Guy.
Oh, that's right.
And if you guys have ever seen Mystery Science Theater 3000, the guy who had a baseball glove for a head, that was his favorite movie that he often would reference.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, they even have it here on the Wikipedia. You know, they were supposed to remake it in 2015 with Ronda Rousey. God, that would have been a horrible idea.
Oh no! Yeah, I remember hearing about that. That would have been the worst.
Yeah. Well, you know what I wanted to get back to though. So, if we were to go on a
Crow T Robot, his favorite movie.
Crow T Robot. Guys. What I wanted to get back to. So, when we were talking about the game shows, we were talking about Legends of the Hidden Temple.
Mm-hmm.
The other one I wanted to talk about was Guts.
Mm-hmm.
Because Guts was like, I watched an episode of it last night. It's so weird to watch through the eyes of a adult compared to when I was a kid.
Was that the one that was like American Gladiators for
yeah,
kids?
it was
All
American
right.
Gladiator. That's exactly what I wrote. American Gladiators for kids.
Right.
And it was always like super. I don't think there was ever a black kid on that show. It was always super white suburban kids that
You
they
know,
shipped in.
the one scene that I watched of Legends of the Hidden Temple, they had a black kid on it, and he just smoked everybody at the
I was gonna
climb.
say, yeah,
It's
he
like
probably-
everybody, these little fucking dweeby white kids are like they're getting like rocks dropped on them, and they can't get up this thing, and he just fucking beelines it up the top. I don't even think he was following the trail. He was just hopping over boulders. Like
The producer probably came in and he was like, "Hey," he's talking to the casting director. He's like, "Take it easy on the black kids, huh? Making our white kids
slow
look
down,
bad,
yeah.
right?
We need
Slow
these
down
white
a
kids.
little."
Yeah. Look, no offense, we just need our white kids to get some wins. We can't just have them in there getting smoked every time.
Guts was a really silly show. It was American Gladiators for kids. They had the aggro crag at the end. Remember that?
Crag.
The aggro crag was like this big giant, probably not even really that big in person, but it looked huge when you were a kid. It was like a mountain that they made that these kids would climb, and then there would be like lights on it along the way that they would have to touch, or like flags they would have to collect or something.
You know what? I'm pretty sure Legends of the Hidden Temple and Guts were like basically the same show. They had all the same shit going on, except like Guts had a different like theme. It was like American Gladiator themed, whereas like Legends of the Hidden Temple was Indiana Jones themed.
Yeah, and Legends of the Hidden Temple had that scary. I thought those dudes at the end were really scary. The guys who'd jump out and like grab you when you're going up to the
when you're going
the
through
shrine
the
of the silver
yeah.
monkey.
Right, when you're going through
Was
the
he a golden monkey? I don't even remember.
I don't know, but it's like a maze, right? You go,
Yeah, it was like a maze.
I think it's a golden monkey. It's the shrine of the golden monkey, and you try to get to the monkey, and then you win. But yeah, there'd be these creepy ass dudes just lurking in these little cubby holes, and they just jump out and fucking grab you. That shit's scary, man.
Yeah, they looked like.
That'd be scary right now. If I did that,
Yeah,
and some guy jumped out, I would probably fucking sock him. Like,
I'm not a fan of like haunted houses and stuff like that. I never have been. I'm just not really into people jumping out and scaring me.
I have fun with it, but I have an actual legitimate fear that somebody's going to jump out and get too close, and I'm going to lay him out. I've done that before.
Just front kick him.
No, I used to work for the city, and we were setting up a haunted house at the Abel Maldonado Center during Halloween, and we just got all the walls up and everything, and then we got the smoke machine up, and then we got everything all set up, but we didn't have any of the props or the scary things in there yet. So I had to go on my lunch break. So I go on my lunch break, I come back, and then this girl who works there, she's like, "Oh, Keith, I want to show you this thing that we just got ready." And I'm like, "Okay." And I go follow her, and she starts kind of like running. So she's trying to get me to follow her fast, you know? So I'm like, I can tell, like I'm being set up for something. And then she like turns a corner and disappears. And this guy, I think it was Julio comes running out with like a... Julio comes running out with a fucking like mask on, and he got me off guard. He got me. He scared me. I wasn't expecting it right then, you know. And I took a step back and I hit him in the face with an open palm, and I fucking laid him out.
So did he like fall over and everything?
Yeah.
Wow.
I was like, oh shit.
Was Julio like, oh dude?
No, I mean he kind of was like, I probably had that coming. I don't know. It startled me, and my response to being startled was to hit whatever scared me.
It's like that. Do you remember that video online that was really popular? Like, this was a while back. It was probably in like the infancy of YouTube. But it was like a dude hiding in a trash can with a Halloween mask on.
Right.
The kid's walking by and he hops out. And the kid just like literally knocks him out.
I think that was so early in the infancy of YouTube that same video was actually on America's Funniest Home Videos.
Oh yeah, probably
before it was on YouTube.
That's a weird thing. I was just thinking about
YouTube
that
completely took over the America's Funniest Home Videos. Yeah.
There's those shows don't exist anymore. It's amazing to me that you even still have a show like that Rob Dyrdek show, Ridiculousness. Like, how does that show survive still? Because all those clips are on YouTube.
Well, I think, isn't Rob Dyrdek just super rich and he just keeps all of his stuff afloat, regardless of whether anybody's watching it or not? Yeah,
Rob Dyrdek has to be like the most low-profile mogul around. Yeah, because he's not like super out there, like like the way that like Tony Hawk was and like Bam Margera was and stuff like that, but he's just kind of lays low and makes a shitload of money, I guess.
Yeah, he's got his shows, Fantasy Factory, Robin Big,
and
now he's doing Ridiculousness, which Ridiculousness is kind of you'd say that's kind of a the same thing as the Daniels Haas show and the Joe McHale show, and which, to be honest, I would really rather watch either one of them because they're just funnier. Like, they're better at being.
It's just like Rob Dyrdek. It's like him and the other guy, Stilo, the girl.
Like Rob Dyrdek's cool and everything, and he has interesting ideas. He makes his money because he has some interesting ideas, but he's not a professional comedian. No. And all he really brings to the table when he watches these videos is just like, oh man, that looks like that hurt.
Reaction.
Yeah.
It's strange because that I remember when I was a kid watching America's Funniest Home Videos, and it was almost always something with a pet, something with a toddler or a baby, or like dad slipping on something. You know what I mean? It was always the same kind of. It was very lighthearted.
It was always very family friendly.
Every once in a while, they would show a clip where the person fell really hard, and you were like, "Oh, they might have died."
Yeah,
but
there was the occasional really, really funny thing on there for sure. Like I remember there being a few things that, but again, it's all stuff that you could just watch on YouTube.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's strange. If you would have told me, I still remember when YouTube first came out, and I remember occasionally going on there and watching stuff. And if you would have told me then that it would be what it is today, like, man, it's taken over everything. I don't really even watch regular TV. Like 99% of the content that I watch is off of YouTube.
Well, I'm more of a movie person, if you guys haven't gathered that from the stuff we talk about on here. But yeah, I watch everything online. I really rarely watch anything on TV. Because TV is so controlling of...
Well, yeah, I can't sit through a fucking commercial anymore. Like, if I gotta sit through... My attention span now If I got to sit through a commercial for 3 minutes, you pretty much lost me. I've moved on. By then, I'm on my phone. I'm reading something else. I'm doing something else.
I'm in another world.
Yeah, so commercials are basically... I don't have time for commercials at this point.
At this point in my life, I don't have time for your advertisements to tell me what I can and can't watch.
Yeah.
No, I don't dig on commercials either. I did watch this thing. I was on a Fire Stick and I saw like there's this live TV app and I started looking through it and I was like, wow, that's really interesting. You know, it's literally just like a cable package, but it's this free live TV thing. And I put a channel on, and immediately before like the movie Troll 2 started, there was a Total Gym commercial on, and I was just like, that's fucking it, man. And I just turned it off and I went back to Netflix.
We had a pretty funny moment here, guys.
If only.
Keith's chair just broke. And it was like out of a movie. Literally, the legs just completely disintegrated underneath him.
I think the legs grew some new actual attachments too. That doesn't make any sense when I'm looking at here.
That actually wasn't bad. That could have been a lot worse because he's sitting and he's got the microphone right in front of him with like a cup of hot coffee, his laptop, and nothing broke. I mean, well, except for the chair. But, you know.
Everything about that situation could have been much worse.
Yeah, that was pretty mellow. So what we were talking about, we were saying, oh yeah, Troll 2. Did we ever talk about Troll 2 on any of the other podcasts?
No, we haven't. You know what? That's a great one, and that came up really organically.
Yeah. Troll 2, for those of you that haven't seen it, it's widely recognized as probably, Troll 2 and The Disaster Artist, or not The Disaster Artist, what's it called? The Room.
The Room.
Those are considered the two, like the creme de la creme as far as great bad movies.
Right. As far as not just the badness of the movie, but particularly how bad the acting is. Yeah. Like Troll 2. What is that famous line where he's like, oh no, they're eating her. And then they're gonna eat me!
Oh my god! Oh my god! There's another line that the guy has in there that the dad has. Something about... I'll have to look this up, guys. But yeah, if you haven't seen Troll 2, it's not for everybody. It's a very particular sense of humor.
It's not for most people.
No. And they actually did. Now, the ironic thing about it is... the kid who was in Troll 2 ended up doing a legitimately very, very good documentary about it. And it's called I think it's called The Greatest Worst Movie Ever Made. Something like that. But I remember I saw it a few years ago, and it was called The Best Worst Movie. Best Worst Movie. I'm
gonna have to watch that later.
It's really, really good, and they give you a whole history of it. Talks about how the guy who directed Troll 2, his name is Claudio Fragasso, and he is
with
Italian.
An Italian name like that, you'd really think he was gonna make a really classy horror movie.
Well,
like
that's
Dario
what he thought
Argento,
he was.
You know, like
yeah. Well, that's what he thought he was making. He thought this guy. When you watch this documentary, it becomes very clear that this dude, till this day, still takes his work very seriously. Mm-hmm. He thinks that Troll 2 is a social commentary on family life, and like he does not view Troll 2 the way that actual fans of Troll 2 view Troll 2.
No, and I can definitely see that. Now, when you watch Troll 2, it is virtually impossible to see it as anything other than a silly bad movie.
That's all it is. Troll 2, the funny thing about Troll 2 as well is it has nothing to do with Troll 1. They're completely unrelated. It's titled as a sequel to Troll, but it's got nothing to do with it.
Even the monsters and everything are kind of like unrelated to the monster in Troll, which is, you know, surprise, surprise, a troll. What was it that they were kind of like trolls in Troll 2, but they were like completely different from the one in Troll 1.
They look like a little they're played by dwarfs, and they look
which was a very classy move that we were allowed to do in the early early 80s and 90s.
Yeah, they look like little. I don't even know. How would you describe them? I mean, I guess they look like trolls, but I don't really know what a troll looks like. I just remember they had really big noses.
A troll is a pretty generic term. Just
They look like.
referring to
I thought
like
they looked more like little gnomes. They look like little gnomes. But it's a really silly movie. And they don't even call them goblins. They call them nilbogs. So it's goblin backwards. Very clever play on words there that they did.
So, they're vaguely similar to the monster on Troll 1. A lot of what's showing on here is the monster from Troll 1 as I look at this. But these were like the costume just seems a lot more cheaply constructed, to be honest. It just is. They're flat, hard, non-movable faces, so it's like obviously a mask that they're wearing, you know, like.
There's a really funny scene in the movie. This is what I was thinking of earlier, guys, where the father figure in the movie, he tells his kid, "You can't piss on hospitality." Well, all right, so so here's the background. The kid is like being sucked into another reality, or he's like dreaming or something. And his family is about to... I'm sorry. I totally butchered this. Here's what happens. In the movie, if they eat this particular food, then they somehow themselves become food for the trolls.
That's right. Yeah, they get... They get like... they start like oozing like out of their eyes or something.
Yeah,
and they become covered in this like cocoon green film. And then they get stuck, and then the trolls come fucking eat them.
Right. So the kid knows about this, but the parents and the rest of the family are unaware. So they're sitting at the dinner table, and the kid decides that the only way to snap...
drink the broth. There we go. I'm looking at the... it's
the
it's
line.
That horrible lady with the white painted face. And,
who's just heinous
the black
looking.
Teeth.
So the son in the movie, the kid, he decides that the only way that he can stop the rest of his family from eating this food and becoming troll food is if he stands up, pulls his dick out, and pisses on it. So that's what he does. The father quickly reprimands him, takes him upstairs, and he says, "You can't piss on hospitality. I won't allow it."
and then he makes him eat the... No,
and then the father begins to tighten his belt to relieve hunger pain. But based on the context, it looks like he's going to piss on Joshua, his son. So Troll 2 is just filled with really odd scenes.
You can't
like
piss
this.
on hospitality, but you can piss on your children.
That's the message that we're trying to get.
That's what Troll 2 was really trying to teach us.
Yeah, so if you guys haven't seen it, check it out. If you might not have the patience to sit through the whole thing, but at least look up funny lines or just funny scenes from it online.
It's a well established enough great bad movie that there's going to be compilation scenes on YouTube that'll show you all the great scenes on Troll 2.
And there's tons of them, so you guys won't have any trouble finding it.
Now, I was kind of tripping out about Troll 1. That's Sonny Bono, right? Who plays like the bachelor guy. He's like, hey man, you can't just move into this apartment complex with kids. I'm gonna be bringing ladies back to my room.
I think it was Sonny Bono in that movie. Now Troll 2. I remember watching as a really young kid. I don't even know if I barely remember Troll 1. Was Troll 1? It wasn't even really a horror movie, was it?
It was more like a fantasy movie that had some horror tones to it. Troll 1 was a much more seriously well done movie. Still old, still outdated. Wasn't really a great movie at any point in time, but it was way better than Troll 2 in a serious sense.
Yeah, Troll 1 looks like it had some... I'm looking at photos right now. It looks like it actually had some fairly legitimate puppetry. Mm-hmm. Troll 2 was completely amateur.
Yeah, Troll 2 was very just fucking throwaway.
I wonder who did the puppetry on Troll 1. Pretty much back then, it was basically like Rick Baker and Tom Savini would just do everything. Tom Savini, did you know that? So do you know who Tom Savini is?
I've heard the name before.
He played Sex Machine in From Dusk Till Dawn.
Yeah.
And he always has those little bit roles. So the reason why they always put him in those little bit roles is because he's the guy who did all the special effects on From Dusk Till Dawn. He's done a bunch of movies. I think he did like Creep Show.
Mm-hmm.
But
I didn't realize that he did that. I mean, I pretty much just knew him as, I'd seen the name multiple times.
He's like the most prolific kind of horror movie special effects guy pretty much ever, I think, because he's done everything from Dusk Till Dawn, Dawn of the Dead. He's been around since forever. The Lost. Well, wait, did he do the original Lost Boys? No, that was the sequel. Scratch that. But he's done a shitload of movies.
Not the original Lost Boys.
He did Creep Show 2, Creep Show 1. He's got a pretty interesting story because he was in Vietnam, and they said that when he came back from Vietnam, he kind of used that as, because he did see a lot of, I think he was like a medic in Vietnam, and they said that he saw a lot of gruesome injuries while he was over there. So when he came back, he kind of used that as he was able to use that to
sort of artistic inspiration drawn from real life violence.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, everything you're kind of mentioning, it definitely has all the works that he's done. They all have pretty distinct violent aspects to them.
Here's what it says here. He was a combat photographer in Vietnam. He saw gruesome carnage, for which he later, simulated on screen. So pretty interesting there. Mm-hmm. He made his debut. Oh no, that's a directing credit. Yeah, if you guys don't know Tom Savini, check him out. He's done a lot of work. So how about let's switch gears a little bit here. We're talking about the fights before here, and I showed Keith. If you guys haven't seen the Lyoto Machida front kick to Vitor Belfort's face, it's like looking in a mirror.
Yeah,
it's pretty crazy.
It's like putting the fight with Anderson Silva and Vitor in front of a mirror and then watching the mirror.
Yeah. And what's crazy, too, Machida might now be the only guy to ever land 2 front kicks to the face to finish a fight that way. Because he finished Randy Couture.
Randy like that.
He finished, that's what's crazy, too, is he finished 2 legendary high-level fighters with a front kick to the face. But, I mean, at the same time, though, it was kind of sad to see Vitor go out like that.
Sure.
It was like, because at this point, it's like he's just like a punching bag, Like he's losing to guys who Machida's not in this category, but, he's just handily losing to top level guys now. I think what Vitor should do, retire, which he says he's going to, or jump back on the TRT. Let's bring TRT Tour back and then go to Bellator.
Yeah. Let's get the Masters League going with all the old dudes on TRT. I'm still about that. I think that's a great idea. I think I think there comes a point where we talk about the effects of being on TRT. Now, if you're young and healthy and you have a healthy amount of testosterone, then it's going to damage your body to abuse steroids and everything. But you get to a certain point where your body stops producing so much testosterone. And you really, you stop healing from injuries as quickly. You stop being able to develop your body as quickly or effectively. And it just makes sense to, at a certain age, to maintain yourself, to be on TRT.
Yeah, basically all the functions in your body that make you work well. It's just like Marcellus Wallace says in Pulp Fiction. When he says, if they say it get better with age, it doesn't.
It doesn't.
You thought your ass was going to age like wine, didn't you? And it's fucking so true because nothing gets better with age. Your body is a organic vessel that will deteriorate with time.
And one of the things that we have an amount of control over is your body's testosterone. We can supplement it. We can fix. We can
rebuild
rebuild
better.
him.
We can make him stronger. Well,
Yeah.
let's be honest here. Vitor Belfort and TRT Tor Belfort are not the same individual. We're talking about two different gentlemen here.
For sure.
It's like Fat Elvis and early Elvis.
But that's because yes, it is exactly. But that's also because Vitor was abusing steroids from like the age of 14. Like
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I would agree with that. I haven't. You know, when Vitor Belfort came to the UFC, and most of you, like a lot of you who are listening to this, you might not have been watching UFC as long as me and Keith have, but I remember around the time when Vitor Belfort debuted.
when he was 18 when he had his first.
Yeah, I used to have an old VHS tape of his debut that was recorded off of pay-per-view.
He was like a heavyweight, wasn't he?
He was a heavyweight.
Yeah, he was a heavyweight. He had perfectly circular basketball shoulders.
His traps were like fucking mounds. The guy was huge.
I'm pretty sure he had 64-inch biceps.
Yeah,
like,
and so here's what's funny though. When he made his debut, Tank Abbott was one of the commentators, and the guy who was commentating with Tank was like, "Oh man, that was a pretty impressive debut, wouldn't you say, Tank?" And Tank was like, "Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it was all right, but it looked a little sloppy." And Tank Abbott, you could tell, is just like, "God damn it, I'm gonna have to fucking fight this guy. He's gonna destroy me." Tank Abbott fought him like 2 fights later, and Vitor knocked him out within like 30 seconds. It was
Vitor just surgically planted his fists in Tank's
so
face.
a young Vitor Belfort. Now Vitor, though, that's the interesting thing, though. It makes you wonder, had Vitor not abused steroids early on, which he most certainly did, makes you wonder what is his real natural weight. Because I don't actually believe the weight that he walks around at now is his legitimate actual weight. I think it is his actual weight post steroids when his body can't produce testosterone. But I think if he had never abused him in the first place, he probably would be slightly bigger than he is now.
I'm more so than just his natural weight.
Because he looks deflated now. Yeah. He looks like a 170 now.
Yeah. Well, more so than that to me, just from what I see watching Vitor's career. Because again, like we both watched Vitor from like his debut time up to now, and it makes me wonder, like, did Vitor improve his skills by doing so much steroids, or did he become, or did he, was there more advantage or more disadvantage the way that he destroyed his body with steroids? Because as we talked about before, we had a little discussion about steroids in earlier podcasts, how it motivates you to work being on steroids. It motivates you to improve yourself and enhance yourself. And if he hadn't been abusing steroids as a very young man, would he have really developed the skills that he has today? Yeah. In that time, would he really have and would he have put together the career that he's put together in up to date?
Yeah, of course, those are legitimate questions, because now there are some things that Vitor has that you can't get from steroids. Obviously, that explosiveness that he has in those first 3 minutes of the fight. You can't teach that. You know, you can't. Some people have it, or some people don't. Sure. You can improve upon it, but the people that naturally have it just naturally have it. That's one thing. But like you said, is if he hadn't been doing what he was doing, and if he wasn't motivated to wake up in the morning and go acquire those skills or sharpen those skills, then would he have, just like Keith said, would have they have been accumulated over time? It's hard to say, you know. That's kind of the sad thing about to me Vitor Belfort's career is because he's just fucked up so many times in regards to the drug testing that it overshadows the great things that he's done. It just leaves room for so much speculation that it's difficult to really quantify how much you can attribute his successes to his skill as opposed to you know, because the drop off between him being on TRT and not being on TRT was just so massive.
Right.
And it's a bummer too, because I loved that streak that he had where he was TRT tour. Was awesome.
Yeah,
that was a super scary fucking fighter. and he went on a hot streak, and he had this whole career resurgence in his late 30s. And then USADA came in, cracked the whip, and man, they shut his career down.
Well, I think the biggest thing about it was that it's really hard to prevent abuse of TRT. Like, sure, it's doctor regulated and everything, but then look at Vitor. He was juiced up to the gills on TRT. He didn't have a doctor putting him at normal levels of testosterone. No. He had like 6 times the testosterone that like a prize bull had.
Might have
in
had
Mexico.
He had a Brazilian doctor.
Yeah, he had exactly.
And that's not me speculating. He did have a Brazilian doctor.
That explains it all.
Fact.
Yeah. This guy was like, "Yeah, you need all this testosterone."
Duh.
Yeah. If it makes me wonder if the whole TRT thing would have been different if we were able to more closely regulate it and closely monitor that people are maintaining fair levels of testosterone repair.
Well, because there was other guys who were using it who went off of it, and you didn't really know. Like Dan Henderson was on it, and he went off, and you didn't even notice a difference.
Yeah,
he still fought exactly the same, pretty much.
Yeah, but he had fucking back problems and shit, and I think that kind of thing stood out more. Like he had more issues with that in his fights after he was off of TRT.
That's true.
And his belly came back a little bit.
A little bit. Yeah.
It's really things like that I think like, man, that guy's career could have been another 5 years if he just had a normal amount of testosterone in his body. But he can't do it because there's guys like Vitor who are severely abusing the rights, and now nobody gets to do it.
Yeah, I don't think I don't necessarily agree with the USADA way of doing things where they just completely ban it. I think there should be some prerequisites in place where maybe there's an age limit. So maybe after a certain age you're allowed to take it. Well, but you know what? Okay, so here's a good example. I remember one time Dennis Hallman was on the MMA Insider show, and he was talking to Bass Rutten about it. This was probably 5 or 6 years ago.
Fucking Dennis Hallman, the guy who got professional wrestling shorts banned from from
because
UFC.
His nutsack literally fell out of his shorts.
His balls fell out of.
That was such a funny fight because Dennis Hallman comes out in those tiny little bikini shorts, where his ball sack almost hangs out,
and Dana White is just like,
and then he fought what the fuck, Brian Ebersol, and Brian Ebersol had a T shaved onto his chest. So it just looked like a complete freak show of a fight.
It was so ridiculous.
Dana White was pissed. He was like, "That's fucking disgusting. Nobody wants to see that. You guys want to see that?" Like, he was so fucking mad.
Dana White had so much shit to talk about Dennis Hallman for that fight.
But anyways, Dennis Hallman was on. He was on MMA Insider, and he got into a little bit of an argument with Bass Rutten about it. Inside MMA. He got into a little argument with Bass Rutten about it because Bass Rutten was saying, "I don't think you should take anything, no matter what. If you get to the point where Bass Rutten has always believed that it's for what he perceives to be mentally weak fighters to do that. People who lack the skills so need to compensate for that and take substances. Dennis Hallman was saying, though, Dennis Hallman went into a history of how apparently he has from the time he was a little kid, he was testosterone deficient and he had trouble developing muscle, and he was telling this whole long story. And he was like, okay, so in that case, Bass, is it a matter of having a weak mind or having a weak body? Because I can tell you in my case, it was having a weak body because I've been dealing with this my whole life. And then he brought up the Bigfoot Silva example where he does have a legitimate pituitary gland issue or something like that where he can't produce testosterone. So I mean, there are examples where it should be allowed. It shouldn't be banned across the board, is what I would say.
To me,
but it's too subjective. It shouldn't be across the board.
Well, yeah. To me, it's really simple. I think we're talking about a medical problem, a medical deficiency. We're talking about something that, for instance, let's use the Bass Rutten example. I'm a huge Bass Rutten fan. I'm not calling him out or talking shit or anything, but he went to Panama to get stem cells because his arm was was atrophying because he had a nerve issue with it. And I think that's great. I think he's doing the right thing by doing that. But if you shouldn't take anything, you shouldn't take stem cells, because that's an answer for a problem that you have.
Exactly.
Having low testosterone is a problem that your body has, but we associate it with this whole Superman complex thing where we go like, yeah, this makes you stronger, it makes you better, so you shouldn't fuck with it at all.
It's a general lack of understanding. It's a lack of understanding from the general.
It's a lack of compassion.
Well,
I think
it's a lack of compassion.
That may be a strong word for that, but I think that's appropriate.
It is. It's a lack of understanding and a lack of compassion. But I think for the most part, a lack of understanding from the general public on the way that the body works and the way that they perceive it. And that's a good example, because it's like, okay, well, in one case, why is it considered not taboo and okay to do things to regenerate nerves, but it's not okay to do something to regenerate muscle?
To regenerate hormones.
Right, regenerate hormones. Or why would it not be okay? If a fighter has got CTE and they've been hit in the head a bunch of times, and they're doing your brain is just supposed to stop working. That's how that's supposed to be. And there's a good example of that. Like, there's this wrestler, Daniel Bryan, who they forced him to retire like 2 years ago. Vince McMahon did, because he had so many concussions. So he did like tirelessly for like 2 years. He did all these therapies, all these different things to prove that his mental cognition and capabilities were still there. And he was actually able to increase it over time using all these new cutting edge therapies.
Right.
What people don't realize is that all these things go hand in hand. Okay, if my nerves aren't functioning properly, then my muscles aren't going to function properly. So thereby enhancing my nerves through the treatment of stem cells, my muscles are going to function better. If my brain isn't functioning properly, then I'm not going to be able to produce the adequate levels of hormones that I'm going to need for my muscles to function properly. So indirectly, by improving that, I'm improving my muscle function. But they have this idea in their head of big muscles, big performance. They jump straight to that.
Right. But yeah, you make a really good point that all the functions of your body are connected. But yeah, just like you're saying about the big muscles, big performance connection, that's something I've always said is like, I never really minded the idea of, and this might be an extreme thing to say, there comes a level when this becomes like not true anymore. But just fighting somebody on steroids, I don't really mind the idea of that, because that doesn't, like, you don't get all your skills from steroids.
No.
I think Boss is correct, like, probably 50% of the time about steroids having to do with, if you're taking steroids, you probably don't trust yourself to be good enough to beat me. Yeah, and I prefer that you fight me like that. I want you to have a nice, big, strong body and fear in your heart.
Well, but it also comes back to too. It's like, it depends on, I guess, which level you're talking about, because when you get to that really, let's say when you get
to the elite level of fighters, that was the next point I was going to make, though, is when you get to the elite level and you're talking about fighters like Vitor Belfort that have all the skills in the world, some of the best skills the best dangerous skills that a fighter can have, and then you start pumping him full of testosterone and you make the engine match the driver, and
that's when you have a recipe for TRT tour.
Yeah, that's when you have a recipe for somebody that I don't want to fight. And that's when again, going back to the TRT thing though, if he was just at a normal adequate level of testosterone, then that's fine.
Yeah,
he shouldn't have to fight with low testosterone. I think that is pretty extreme. Like, if it's a real thing. It's not like we're talking about. No, it's not like testosterone itself is a performance enhancing drug. It's a natural hormone that your body produces, and if your body doesn't produce enough of it, you're pretty much every physical function of your body is going to be diminished.
It's extreme. Look, it's Ben Greenfield had a really good quote about this, and he was talking about using unnatural means to meet an unnatural end. So it's like, look at the human body. Like when I was doing when I did my marathon, right? Okay, the human body doesn't want to run 26 miles. It's not something that it is happy to do.
Right.
Okay, so when I go and I do a marathon and my energy levels are in the fucking toilet for a week after, and I can barely even get through one kettlebell workout without huffing and puffing and fucking feeling like I have a fucking fever, That's my body telling me that, hey, it doesn't want to do this very often.
Yeah.
But now obviously I don't take anything. I'm not at a high level at that. But when you get guys who are at a high level at that and they make their living doing that and they need to be able to get back out there and do that again, maybe some guys do it like, once a month, then they're going to use unnatural means to meet that unnatural end. There's a difference. We're not talking about regular people here who are doing this.
Right.
Now there are regular people who do it, and it's like, to me, that's like stupid.
And again, we're also not talking about regular people, and we're not talking about, once again, we're not talking about abusing it. We're talking about being at like putting yourself to meet the needs of what you're doing.
Right. Yeah. And so yeah. And here's where I was going with that. So like, if you have somebody who does a marathon or does some kind of crazy physical endeavor, the point being is your body is going to be depleted after that. It's not going to be at a normal level. It's going to be subnormal. People who aren't familiar with it have
You're
this
going to be damaged and you need to recover.
Right. They would look at a fighter and they go, look at this guy. He's a physical specimen. He probably walks around feeling great. No, they're fucking tired all the time.
Yeah.
Their testosterone is in the shitter because they're training so hard. They don't feel good at all the time.
Right.
So yeah, it is, like you said, a lack of understanding, a lack of compassion. They haven't been in the trenches of whatever it is they're commenting on most of the time, so they just don't really understand what it is they're talking about.
It's just, once again, it's a matter of people talking about something that they don't understand. That, we have people making these rules for people that have never had the cage door locked behind them, and they're deciding what these people can and can't do.
Yeah.
People who, this is what they do. They make their living off of this. Once again, you were talking about, marathon runners doing it once a month and stuff. Well, we got people here who are fighting to feed their families, and they don't really have another skill set.
Right.
Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But in this particular case, let's say we're talking about a guy who doesn't. This is what he does for a living. And medically, he's depleted. Medically, his testosterone has become depleted, and maybe it is because of something he did to himself. Maybe he abused steroids when he was younger. But while that sucks, and that that doesn't make it okay to do that, this is still this person's career, and we're gonna just be like, well, now you can't do this anymore because your body isn't strong enough.
Yeah, and that's another good way of looking at it, because that's another unfair thing about it, is they came in, they had a rule before, okay, and the rule was you can do this. Now, whether or not people were abusing it and this and that, that's all subjective. These were the rules, and they were simply doing what they were allowed to do.
Right.
Now, is it fair to come back in there and just make all these dudes go cold turkey? Because you altered the rules suddenly? That's really not a smart way to go about it. A smart way to go about it would be to give everybody a time period to allow them to taper off of these things.
Right.
And maybe even put a protocol, instead of just automatically going in with this kind of black and white, this is wrong now. Go in with an actual informed kind of education system on how to help these guys adjust back into not being on this stuff anymore.
Right.
Because it was allowed before. And they were just doing what they were allowed to do, but now it's not allowed. So help them out here.
Right. Give them something to work with. Here.
Right.
Yeah.
Because if you're looking at it from a moral perspective, that's the most moralistically right thing to do, I would assume.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're essentially just taking people's jobs away.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a pretty rough thing. I mean, we can go on all day with that.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about also in regards to the fight. We were talking about Mackenzie Dern missing weight by 8 pounds. So she was supposed to weigh in at 115, and she weighed in at 123.
So what I do want to say about this, Matt made a pretty interesting point when we were talking about it earlier about how Mackenzie Dern is a little soft. Like, she looks like she could probably physically drop some actual fat weight and have an easier time getting down to weight. But I've run into girls having trouble making weight before. Now, physiologically, girls, their bodies work a little different from guys, and like there can be conditions that make it harder for them to actually drop weight. Like, I remember one girl at a fight I was at. She couldn't cut the last like 4 or 5 pounds or something like that. The girl refused to fight her, but the girl couldn't drop the weight because she was on her period and she was having water retention issues. So she literally had a physiological reason why she couldn't make weight. I don't know what's going on with Mackenzie Dern. Like, that's a pretty extreme thing, but if something like that happens, you know, once again, there should be a little bit of compassion for it.
Yeah, well, and if that was the case, obviously that would be a thing. But at the same time, if you're a Mackenzie Dern, okay, all the other women have to make weight too. And it's like, if you're a Mackenzie Dern, and they don't seem to have too many troubles with that.
Right.
If you're a Mackenzie Dern, that should be factored into your preparation, shouldn't it? Like, you should know that, okay, like...
Well, you're a top-level fighter, and you're a professional in one of the biggest industries in the world.
You should know that, okay, there's a chance I don't know what her menstruation cycle looks like, obviously.
I'm not saying that had anything to do with it, but I mean, like, that's just an example.
Yeah,
of
well,
and
women,
for girls.
For those of you guys that don't know, too, like, women naturally hold a higher body fat percentage, so weight cutting can be more difficult for women than it can be for a man. And there are other hormonal factors, like Keith said.
There are. I don't know the exact science of it, but I know that women physically have more water retention than men do.
Yeah.
Like, they just don't drop water the way guys do.
Yeah.
Sweaty ass dudes, girls always smell nice. That's just
yeah. Well, but with Mackenzie Dern, I think when it's just any way you slice it, like, I think when you're 8 pounds over like that, like, this was pretty much like universal from all of the fighters that speculated on it after the fact. That's just like gross negligence to me, because that's an entire weight. So the next weight class above 115 would be 125. She weighed in at 123.
Yeah. So she barely made weight for the next weight class.
Exactly. So it's like, it's crazy to me. You know, you have the company giving you like this big push. They're putting all their fucking, not to mention, she's not like a journeyman. Like, she's a world champion jiu-jitsu practitioner. She comes from a background where she's clearly knows how to be disciplined and knows how to be professional.
Yeah, and she's like super hot too. So like, they're definitely wanting her to be really successful.
They do.
Like,
and the rumor was
that's gonna sell tickets. A super hot Mackenzie Dern like being.
Well, yeah, and of course, and the rumor mill online was she was training at the MMA lab in Arizona before with John Crouch, who trains Benson Henderson, and she was training over there, and he no longer welcomed her to train there about a month ago. Really? And the rumor was that he was upset because she was spending a little too much time coming down to LA and partying. And kind of the word on the street was that she has kind of issues with, she doesn't train enough. She likes to go party, and she's not very disciplined when it comes to her pre-fight habits.
Right. Could see that. Makes sense.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. If we're just looking at it from an outsider's perspective, obviously not knowing the intricacies of her daily life and her training camp and all these things.
I don't know.
But she's had issues making weight before, too. This isn't the first time. I don't remember specifics on the other ones, but...
She does look like she's having a lot of fun on her Instagram. It's a lot of, like, selfies at the beach.
It's all bikini shots.
Like, it's all bikini shots and her just... enjoying herself. So
yeah, and I guess she got fined. So the girl that she fought, Mackenzie Dern, the girl got 30% of her purse for her not making weight, and then the girl that she fought got half of her win bonus, I think, of Mackenzie Dern's win bonus. I think it should have been all of it. I think they should have just given her the fucking win bonus.
Yeah, she probably should have gotten the whole win bonus.
Like, because, I don't think that's enough.
Cutting so much less weight, obviously, that's a huge fucking advantage for her. You know,
massive.
Just being physically that much less depleted and that much physically larger. Like, I don't know.
Well, think of the difference between the size of like a featherweight and a lightweight, or you know what I mean. There's a big difference there. So
sure,
It's fucking. It's just. It's not the same thing. So it shouldn't. She should either just move up a weight class and forget cutting weight altogether, or learn how to do it right. I guess I don't know. I was
You
listening.
can't just fight smaller people than you. It just doesn't work that way. That's what weight classes are for.
Yeah, well, I was listening to this interview with Chuck Liddell yesterday. He was on the MMA Hour, and he's gonna fight again. By the way,
I heard
he's coming
about
out of
that.
retirement.
He's doing the Tito Ortiz.
Yeah, and Oscar De La Hoya is gonna put. Oscar De La Hoya is crazy.
So they actually they went with the Golden Boy.
They're in talks with Golden
Okay,
Boy.
I heard that was speculative that Golden Boy might be picking up the
Speculation,
fight.
but Chuck confirmed that they are in. It seems like Golden Boy is the front runner.
Golden Boy is the front runner for the Chuck Liddell Tito Ortiz rivalry conclusion.
And here's the silly thing about it. I don't think we talked about this already, but this is not a rivalry.
Yeah,
Chuck destroyed him twice already.
We've definitely talked about this between each other. I don't know if we talked about it on the podcast, but yeah, this is not a rivalry.
A rivalry would require one guy gets a win, the other guy gets a win.
A rivalry requires
two close competitive fights, maybe.
Yeah.
These are not competitive fights. Chuck completely, when they were both in their prime, Chuck destroyed him. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, if they were to fight at this point and Tito was to get a win, it wouldn't be anything other than Chuck just being old.
Yeah, right. There's no way to conclude this fight in any sort of meaningful way. It's really just a circus.
Yeah.
It's like Ken Shamrock fighting Kimbo Slice.
Yeah, exactly.
That wasn't really didn't mean anything. It was just a fight that they just were like, yeah, let's just do this.
Yeah.
Fuck it.
And what Chuck said on MMA Hour, he was talking, Ariel was talking to him about the weight cutting issues, and Chuck said that he called Uriah Faber and talked to him about it, and he was like, dude, what's going on? Like, how come people, because it does seem like it happens more now than it used to back in the day.
I remember when Chuck Liddell was a coach on The Ultimate Fighter, and he had this one guy who was having a hard time making weight, and he was fucking pissed. He was like walking around, and he was just like, I don't know what the fuck is wrong with all these fucking pussies that can't fucking cut weight. I wrestled with guys in college that would cut their fucking balls off to get 2 ounces of...
Well, and that's what he was saying, basically. And he also said, too, he said that he thinks, I think he kind of alluded to the fact that maybe it's people just letting their weight get too out of control to begin with. Because what he said was that, he cut to 205 and he walks around at 225. That's his constant kind of walk around weight. And he said he would never allow himself to cut more than I want to say 9 pounds of water weight or something like that. So he had kind of like a limit on the amount of water weight he would let himself cut.
So he would have a good strategy.
Right. He had a system in place that he didn't stray from.
Yeah. What a lot of people don't really know about Chuck Liddell, because most of his TV things that he gets, most of the TV attention he gets is him strung out on drugs, or that's most of his media appearances. But Chuck Liddell's a very intelligent guy. He's a Cal Poly graduate in San Luis Obispo, which is a very nice school. He is very well articulated, and he also his striking style, though it looks very awkward, he was very intelligent about angles and timing. Chuck's a powerhouse and a smart guy, but I think he gets more known for his passing out on the couch talking about the movie 300. Yeah,
what was I gonna say right now? What was I thinking of? Maybe some of that Chuck Liddell greatness has been forgotten over time. He, what's funny? Interesting that he said was that he wants to come back, get a couple wins, and he eventually wants to work his way back to a fight with John Jones. That's what he said.
Hey, you know what? But good for him.
But in defense of Chuck, for those of you, for the collective possible laughter out there, he did say he didn't necessarily say, as he elaborated on it more, he didn't necessarily say that he thought it was a realistic goal. He just said that he said basically that he needs to have thoughts like that in his head to get motivated to fight again. Like he has to have something to work towards.
Sure.
So that makes sense from that point of view.
You got to see that. You got to see that gold in your head to get motivated just to do anything before
Now,
that.
do you think Dana White? Let's say Chuck Liddell comes back, knocks out Tito in the first, embarrasses him, goes on, maybe gets a fight with like Chael Sonnen, beats Chael. Let's say he does get a couple wins. Do you think Dana White would? And let's say he looks pretty good in those wins. Do you think Dana White would consider signing him again for a one-off fight with like a John Jones?
Probably not.
Yeah, I don't think he would either.
Chuck Liddell at this point in his career would have to do some pretty spectacular things. I think he would really have to have like a full-blown run to get enough realistic attention to get a fight with John Jones. He would have to come back to UFC. He'd have to work his way back into UFC, and then he would have to get some wins in the UFC. And I think only then would he possibly even get a fight with John Jones. It would be a very rough road to the title for Chuck Liddell right now.
And Jones is such an asshole, dude. You should have seen Jones's response to it. Was like he's such a savage asshole. He put like something like, Chuck's been trying to get a fight with me for years now, talking all this shit about me in the media. You better be training those jaw muscles or testing that chin before you try to, like, he just like totally called him out. Like, he's always trying to clown on Chuck. But Chuck has made some comments where, Chuck, I don't think it was anything bad that he said. He's never blatantly shit talked John Jones or anything.
I think I remember him like shortly after he retired saying some stuff about how he could see some holes in John Jones' game that he thinks he could exploit. Very logical things.
Yeah.
To
All
say.
he said was that in his prime, he feels like his style could beat Jones' style. That's it. That's all he said. But Jones I think he's a pretty emotional dude, and he takes that shit pretty personally.
Jones don't want to hear that from nobody.
Yeah. Well, if they do put that fight together, that would be pretty interesting. I think the route to go for Chuck is to get some fights over in Bellator. There could be some interesting matchups for him there. I would be interested in seeing him versus like a guy like a Chael Sonnen or some of those dudes over there.
Dude, I just I before I say anything about that, I got to see what he looks like when he comes back. It's been a while.
True.
Has he been training this whole time?
He says he has, and that's kind of the word on the street. I remember actually even before...
Because even when he was fighting, he was still doing blow with his girlfriend and shit. But, I remember he was, like, partying a lot while he was fighting, but then didn't he have, like, a health kick after he retired? Like, he had this big thing where he was, like... getting healthy with his new girlfriend or something, and they had like all this lifestyle change.
No,
shit
he
going
did.
on.
So, I mean, that was kind of the word on the street. Is even before he made his announcement that he would be making a potential comeback, there was a lot of speculation of like just from other people who had seen him in the gym and said that he looked good and he stayed in shape this whole time. And,
well, when he had that little one-off comeback fight with Rich Franklin, you remember that one?
Yeah.
He, before getting knocked out, he was fucking tuning Franklin up. And Franklin was still sharp. Franklin was at a sharp point in his career. If you guys don't remember Rich Franklin, that guy was a motherfucker. That was a great fighter.
Kind of like Rich Franklin was one of the first all-around solid MMA fighters. Not like a specialist in any one area. Just like good everywhere.
Yeah. He could knock people out. He could choke people.
Yeah. And he was one of the first smart fighters who was calculated in his approach and actually he was one of the first true professionals. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. I don't know if he's one of the first per se. That was pretty late in the years of the UFC, but he was definitely one of the first that was at that level. I would say,
because he was a math teacher, so he started with like MMA. He didn't have any like specialty. Right. All the guys from his era, for the most part, had some kind of specialty background that they came from, and then they kind of transitioned over. So
it was like basically what that movie Warrior was referencing.
exactly.
Because the guy's a physics teacher. So clearly they're talking about Rich Franklin here.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
But yeah, you never really know what you're going to get out of a guy like Chuck Liddell when he makes his comeback. I'd love to see what happens. I'm very interested in that. Regardless of him being in a good place or a bad place, Chuck Liddell's always exciting to watch fight. Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's bring him back. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, and
he's not even really that old either, is he? He's what,
48.
Like 48? It's pretty old, sure, but like
you're like on second thought.
it's pretty old, but still like not that bad.
Yeah, no, and I have no interest in seeing Tito fight again unless it's to get beat up by Chuck.
Yeah, that is always acceptable. I'm always happy to see Chuck beat up Tito.
Have you ever met like a legitimate diehard MMA fan who's a fan of Tito? Like I feel I feel like Tito is the very stupid fans' favorite fighter.
Tito Ortiz is like the Tito Ortiz fans are always these guys who are like, oh yeah, man, I love watching UFC. That Tito Ortiz is like, oh man,
he ground and pounds, man. Tito's gonna take him down and pound him.
Yeah,
dude.
he's gonna ground and pound him. It's like, ugh.
Yeah, Tito.
It's always very casual fans who like don't know any other fighter's name. So they've never seen him fight before.
And then remember Tito had this weird phase, like it was probably like 5 or 6 years ago. It was way later on in his career where he tried to like start calling himself the people's champ.
Yeah.
He was like, I'm just coming out here giving the fans what they want to see, man. And like, you're like, what? No, everybody hates you. Nobody's ever liked you.
The fans don't want to see you.
Yeah.
That's what you're giving the people is exactly what they don't want to see.
Yeah, Tito is... and it's funny, too, because he would always try to... He was so, like, cowardly in avoiding the dangerous fights. I mean, there's just... If you really look at it...
Well, that was one of the things when I was first... I think I was probably, like, 12 years old, started really getting into MMA and stuff. And that was, like, the thing... When Tito Ortiz was champion, he did like 4 fights in 4 years or something like that.
Yeah, no, like, he would never fight the dangerous fighters.
And he fought like Evan Tanner, which Evan Tanner's a great fighter. Rest in peace, legend. But he knocked out Evan Tanner with a slam. Evan Tanner was like a foot shorter than him, and he was like probably like 30 pounds less than him. Like, I don't even know what he was doing in there with him.
Yeah, I don't know either. And he, Tito, remember I remember when we were like 14 or 13, we went over to Nathan's house and he fought Randy Couture, or no, Ken Shamrock.
Yeah.
That was way back in the day. That was in 2002.
I was for sure that, because I didn't really have the knowledge that I have today, like, I was a Ken Shamrock fan because I knew him,
of course,
from like the
everybody
early,
was rooting for Shamrock in that fight.
I was just like, for sure Shamrock's gonna tear him up, and it was just like an awful fight.
It was so disappointing. That was like pre-knowledgeable MMA fan.
Yeah,
where you just assumed that Shamrock was gonna go in there and
with no
not realizing how bad Ken Shamrock was.
Yeah, or how just destroyed he had become through the years. Like that's a real example of a guy who. He abused steroids.
Oh yeah, fuck.
Just to the point where he destroyed his body. My coach did some training with Lions Den. He told me some funny stories. Like
really,
yeah. Well, my coach is a Frank Shamrock student.
Oh, okay.
So he got kind of plugged into Lions Den for a while, and he just said like, every time you go train at Lions Den, all you really do it's like all these big dudes lifting weights, and then they try to kill you. He said like he sparred with Ken Shamrock with MMA gloves on, and like said it was like such a surreal moment. Like Ken Shamrock swinging on me here, and it's just awful. But he's really trying to hurt me. I was like, what a funny thing to remark on how bad this legend is at his striking.
So how old was Ken Shamrock at this point when he got to spar with him?
I don't know. This must have been in like early mid 2000s. It was probably like around the time that I don't really know. Well, like my coach wasn't really specific on the timeline when he was telling me the story, but it must, like, I assume it was probably relatively close to the time when that fight took place, the Tito and Ken Shamrock. That would make sense anyway. Ken Shamrock is making his return and everything. He's in there training.
Yeah.
My coach is in there getting swung on by him, just kind of like starstruck, like, my God, this is a legend. And it's really weird, these things he's doing, but he's really trying to hurt me.
Was there any other crazy stories, or was
from with Lion's Den?
Yeah.
Or off the top of my head, I don't really remember any other. Like, that was just really the one that stands out. But he would just kind of talk about how he would go train with those guys. He had the whole Lion's Den there, you know.
Right.
It was like Vernon White and
yeah.
Vernon White, right? He was Lion's Den.
Yeah, I think so.
And what are the other guys? Mikey Burnett.
Yeah.
So, like, Mikey Burnett was, like, super good. He just, like, didn't have a good career. Things just kind of didn't work out for him.
Isn't he still fighting? Or am I thinking of somebody else? Am I thinking of Josh Burnett? I might be thinking
Josh Barnett?
Yeah,
yeah, he's still... Josh Barnett is still fighting, yes.
Not Josh Barnett. Isn't there the guy? Oh no, I'm thinking of Josh Berkman.
Oh, so, Josh Berkman?
Yeah. Yeah, Lion's Den, man, that's like an old school fucking...
Really the breakdown of everything he told me about that team is just like, well, it's a bunch of guys trying to kill you. Like, if they can knock you out, they're going to. If they can choke you out, they're going to. They're gonna fuck you up in there if they can get away with it.
So they had some they had some dudes back in the day. Lion's Den had Ken Shamrock, Guy Mesger, Roy Nelson trained there at one point. Frank Shamrock, Maurice Smith, Vernon White. Yeah, they had some dudes.
Dude, Lion's Den was like, that was pretty intense for a while. Like, that was a big, hard team.
Yeah. Oh, tryout. Listen to this shit. This is hilarious. Historically, the Lion's Den is known for its brutal tryouts. Marine boot camp is not fun. It's not pretty. That's because they are preparing you for war. I'm preparing my fighters for war, Shamrock said when discussing the tryout. Once accepted into the den, the members would be financially backed by Shamrock. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So Shamrock made the tryout very difficult to ensure the fighter was totally committed to becoming a professional fighter. The tryout consisted the following: 500 squats, 200 push-ups, 200 sit-ups, 1.5 mile run, repeated runs up and down bleacher steps, bear crawls up steep hills, lugging heavy barrels of water and sandbags up steep hills. The candidates who were still left at this point would then go on to do as many pull-ups as they could without stoppings. Candidates then went on to the actual Lion's Den facility for several hours of sparring.
Several hours of sparring.
That sounds miserable. Yeah. That's a very, very pro wrestling style tryout, because they did the exact same thing. I think they called it like the factory with WCW back in the 90s. They would do almost the exact same thing. They would have you do a shitload of air squats, push-ups, and then whoever, if you broke, you had to leave. But they would try to weed out the mentally weak people from... Chael Sonnen actually talked about on his podcast how he did one of those WCW tryouts. And he said it came down to him and one other guy, and they actually made it all the way through, but he decided he didn't want to be a pro wrestler.
Right. Well, Ken Shamrock, that kind of makes sense, because he was one of the early MMA fighters who transitioned to professional wrestling.
Yeah.
I think that was the first place I actually saw him on, was one of the WWE or WWF games.
Yeah, because they put him in some pretty big programs. He had programs with actually The Rock, who's the biggest star on the planet right now, had his first big breakout storyline with Ken Shamrock. And they had him involved in a lot of stuff.
Right. Yeah, again, I think I've mentioned this before, but my biggest awareness of professional wrestling comes from the video games. I think it was one of like the early PS1 wrestling video games that had Ken Shamrock on it. And I remember them doing something with him and Dan Severn.
Dan Severn. Yeah. Well, okay, so
because they had their big super fight in UFC.
Yes.
Where for about 30 minutes they just kind of like pawed at each other and didn't really do anything.
Kind of nullified. Yeah. Well, let me.
It was more than nullified.
Let me go pee real quick, and then I'll explain a very funny pro wrestling MMA related thing.
All right. So, Once again, it's just you and I. Matthew has left us to relieve himself, but he really is the expert on the pro wrestling thing. So honestly, when it comes down to it, for me, I couldn't even list off probably 5 professional wrestlers with. See what I got here. So I know The Rock. I know. No, Goldberg. There we go. Goldberg's a good one. Steve Austin. Yeah, we know Steve Austin. With his Stone Cold Stunner move that, let me see. Kane and The Undertaker. There we go. I got 5. I did it. I always like to think of the King from the movie Ready to Rumble, which is one of my classics growing up. I love the idea of them taking professional wrestling and then doing it for real. So that was like kind of what they did on the movie. Is like they just abandoned the script and just were like, all right, we're gonna fuck this guy up and ruin his whole career, send him back to the trailer park, and then he flips the script on them and does the whole thing back at him at the end of the day. Not the end of the day, but at the end of the movie. I think you guys should watch it. If you like professional wrestling, or even if you don't, it's a David Arquette movie, which I know that doesn't really cause a lot of appeal. You probably, in fact, that most of you who are probably going to watch that, once I mention the name David Arquette, you probably tuned out. So,
Are you talking about Ready to Rumble?
God, you're great, Matt.
If you guys haven't seen Ready to Rumble, don't watch it. It sucks. That's all I have to say about it. So funny.
No, I love it. It's one I grew up on. It's terrible though. He's absolutely right.
Terrible. Funny, and I need to quit drinking tea before our podcast starts because almost every time I have to take a massive urination about midway through.
It's true. Tea really runs through the old bladder. But let's hear this story, man.
Yeah. So a funny one is back in the late '90s, WWE. WWF at the time ran a program called the WWF Brawl for All. Some of you might remember this. It was a weird thing where they were legitimate tough man competitions, and they would take actual current WWE superstars and have them participate in these. And the whole reason they created it, the rumor is...
Do you mean tough man competition? Like they put boxing gloves on all these
Yes.
fat guys and had them fight with each other?
And they even, at the beginning of it...
That's where Tank Abbott got his 600 knockouts from.
Yes. And in the beginning of it, they even allowed takedowns. So they had takedowns, but with boxing gloves. So it was just completely stupid, poorly produced competition. And they had this guy named Dr. Death Steve Williams, who was a notorious tough guy backstage, and he was a badass NCAA wrestler, and he was just an all-around badass athlete, and he had a notorious, reputation. And they figured they would create this, and figuring he was going to win it. He was a shoo-in, and it would kind of highlight what a badass he was, and they would be able to build his star off of that. Backfired on him. Because there was a guy in it named Bart Gunn who nobody knew, who... Now, look, by UFC standards, this guy was not badass. But by WWF standards, the guy could hit like a fucking super hard. And
it was like a guy who actually knew how to fight, stepping in with guys who knew how to like...
Not necessarily a guy who knew how to fight. I would describe it as somebody who just had a natural talent for fighting.
Right.
Like he just hit really fucking hard.
Okay, so he was in there with a guy who could fight.
He was a guy who, if he had, if he would have, maybe applied his talents to training, he could have became a fighter or had a possible future in that. It's hard to say.
Right.
But what happened was once they started doing this, they realized pretty quick that everybody was getting hurt doing it, number one. So they would get hurt doing it because they weren't trained fighters, and they wouldn't be able to continue doing their pro wrestling commitments. So it was a disaster in that regard. Dr. Death did okay at first, and he ended up winning his first fight, I think, but then he ended up getting knocked out by Bart Gunn in the championship of it. So, and there
sounded like that was where it was going to go.
Well, and the most prominent tough guys at the time were Dan Severn and Ken Shamrock. and they were they actually Ken Shamrock did not compete in the tournament, but Dan Severn competed in it, and he defeated the Godfather in the first round.
The Godfather.
The Godfather. He's a wrestler who used to come out with the Ho Train. So he was a pimp character, and he had a hoe train. He had like 20 hoes he would come out with.
When you were in the bathroom, I was discussing with the audience here how I was trying to name 5 total professional wrestlers. I did, and that's how I got into Ready to Rumble. That's pretty much where I know them from.
Well, and yeah, so a lot of dudes got injured, and Godfather Dan Severn did compete in it. He beat the Godfather. Ken Shamrock
he took his hoe train from him.
Yeah, and Shamrock did not want to. Shamrock opted not to compete in it. I don't remember what the reason why was, but Ken Shamrock said he didn't want to.
It's too tough. It's too tough in the tough man competition.
Probably. And so what ended up happening was after, Bart Gunn ends up winning the whole thing, he ended up knocking out, in the championship, he knocked out Bradshaw, who's a kind of a former WWE star.
I've vaguely heard of Bradshaw. If I hear the name and I think I was either a WWE guy or he was a country singer. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, and also Steve Blackman was in there, and Steve Blackman was also a notorious... there were some fairly tough guys in there, like Steve Blackman, who is a lifelong martial artist and is actually a black belt in multiple disciplines. Mm-hmm. He competed in the first round, and he did pretty well. He just took the guy down over and over again. Mm-hmm. And Mark Merrow was in there. He's a former WWE superstar who was a Golden Gloves champion, and he had a boxing background. Mm-hmm. So Steve Blackman defeated him.
Who was that? Which one was that dude who, like... fucking was really into kickboxing and he fucking head kicked the interviewer or something? Like I think it was like a guy. It was that old story of them being like, "Isn't wrestling fake?" and he like head kicks him or something. Or
no, you're talking about that was what the fuck is?
I remember the guy who slapped him.
Yeah, that's the guy. That's the guy who slapped him.
Yeah, and he's like, that feel fake?
That feel fake?
That feel fake?
I think that was Magnum PI. I don't remember that dude's name, but yeah, no, that guy was... Well, because look, people have to understand that back when that was filmed, wrestling, for those of you that don't understand it, wrestling was different back then. Mm-hmm. Or no, Magnum TA, I'm sorry. His name was Magnum TA. Wrestling was different back then. Because a lot of these guys, even though they weren't boxers or wrestlers or trained fighters, a lot of them, number one, came from the background of being actual legitimate shoot wrestlers. So they were actual tough guys. Mm-hmm. They went out there and they did a work. And in the 80s and in the 70s, you could make a lot of money doing professional wrestling. You couldn't, unless you were a big-time boxer like Muhammad Ali, you couldn't really make a lot of money fighting. So a lot of these tough guys went to professional wrestling.
Right.
So
that was like the outlet for people who were in sport fighting things. Like people who were in societies of sport fighting, professional wrestling was kind of the only outlet for it.
Yeah, so when people people have this understanding of, they just automatically assume, well, it's scripted, it's fake, and these guys they don't really know how to fight. Well, that doesn't mean that they're not like tough dudes. A lot of these dudes from the 80s, from that guy's era, were pretty fucking rough, burly guys who fucking
and a lot of them did know how to fight.
Yeah, and they lived rough. They not even just the fact that they knew how to fight, they were just rough dudes back then. Mm-hmm. I mean, these were guys who were on the road every day, every year. They had no family. They were like modern day cowboys. Mm-hmm. And they just didn't give a shit about anything.
Yeah, they'd be on the road like 300 days a year. Or
exactly.
Like that,
and they were drinking every day. They were full of fucking juice, steroids. Mm-hmm. Like, these were just aggressive fucking men.
Right.
So in that interview in particular, when the dude asked him about it being fake, he just like totally like bitch slapped him and just... Yeah. Man, that was really... Even actually, there's a famous video. Hulk Hogan did it one time to Richard Belzer on the Richard Belzer show. Mm-hmm. And he got sued for it for millions of dollars. He went onto the Richard Belzer show, and Belzer for a long time had been making all these jokes about pro wrestling being fake. Mm-hmm. So Richard Belzer had Hulk Hogan come on the show in the 80s, and he had him demonstrate a technique on him. And Hulk Hogan basically just got him in a guillotine. Because Hulk Hogan, even though he wasn't a real fighter, he still knew some techniques to actually put somebody out. So Hulk Hogan got him in a guillotine, and just like a total asshole, Hulk Hogan got him in this guillotine, and then once he passed out, Hulk Hogan just let him drop. And Richard Belzer just face planted it.
Bust his face open. I think I remember that. Yeah.
Richard Belzer woke up from it completely disoriented. He ran off stage, and Hulk Hogan just put his arms up in the air and shrugged. And Richard Belzer sued WWE for a lot of money, and he won because that was like a real thing, you know.
Yeah.
So there is some interesting interplay there between those two worlds where people, because it's like still to this day, people get it, it's a little hazy, you know, and people will see somebody like a Brock Lesnar and they don't really get where the, you know, Brock Lesnar is obviously in this day and age is a rare exception to the rule. There's not a whole lot of dudes like that can do both.
Did I ever tell you about Russell Brand, how I drove his assistant one time?
I don't think so.
Well,
you drove Russell Brand's assistant?
Yeah, his personal assistant.
Oh, all right.
And
this is good.
Yeah, this is so she is this very sweet little British girl, and she, like, very mousy, unassuming little voice, and she's telling me about how she does. She's telling me about how she does like personal assisting work for famous comedians. It's like her main thing, and she's basically like the business side of everything. And so I'm talking to her, and we were in the car together for like almost an hour, so it was a long ride. And so I'm talking to her. I'm like, so what else do you like? What are your other interests aside from like working with comedians and doing like business and phone calls for them? Sweet little British girl. She's like, well, it might sound really strange, but I'm really, really, really into professional wrestling.
That's hilarious.
That was like her number one thing that she was into was professional wrestling, and it was fucking killing me.
Wow.
Yeah. So I don't know. It reminded me of her because you were talking about all these stories, and that was basically what she was doing the whole time. Like once we got into that, she just started telling me about like all the books she's read about professional wrestlers and all like the background life of them. It's like,
well, that's kind of what happens for the pro wrestling fan is as you get older, you lose interest in the event. Wrestling itself. Yeah. You lose interest in the storylines and all that shit, and you get more into the what's going on backstage.
Right.
And it's a really, really interesting world because it's very political. I mean, it's all this weird kind of backstage manipulation and
it's a lot of money, and it's a lot of like pain and hard work and everything. Like you were talking about them being on the road all the time. These guys can't have families or anything. They've got concussions and injuries all the time. They're all fucking they're damaging their bodies with all like the roids they're doing and everything. So it's like, yeah, it's gonna get political when things are really tense like that.
Yeah, and it's evolved too because now it's like it's the way it's described now is the backstage environment has changed over the years. So like a lot of the guys who are pro wrestlers now, the culture has changed where like they don't even really like party anymore. They just like play video games backstage and shit like that. And they're like guys who were geeks growing up who were into pro wrestling and became pro wrestlers.
Oh, that's
like
funny.
It's a different, and you do still have a lot of those former athletes in there, but it used to be where it was all like former athletes,
right,
who became wrestlers.
It was all these super buff maniacs,
former bodybuilders or former football players
doing their fucking gymnastics.
Yeah. Well, while we're on the subject of celebrity interactions, you've had a few celebrity interactions Ubering.
A couple. Not too many. I drove Juno Temple. That was pretty cool. I got to this. I was following my GPS. I ended up at this studio in kind of like Santa Monica area. And I see the name is Juno on it, and I pull into the driveway and I look and I see this like big poofy blonde head, and like I open up my window, I'm all Juno, and I look and it's Juno Temple, and I was like, no shit.
That's crazy.
And she gets in the car, and like I had her in the car for like 45 minutes or something like that. She was super cool. She just talked about we just like talked about music and stuff. Like she was a big like 70s rock fan, I guess. So, you know, if you guys want to know something about Juno Temple, there you go. And now she's on that movie coming out, that Unsane movie that really looks like
that's right, yeah.
Really looks like it was filmed on an iPhone. and
she does a lot of those like psychological thrillers.
and it's Steven Soderbergh, which is like a well-known director, but nobody else looks famous or even good at acting on this movie. It's really weird. Like it's almost like they did an intentional like garage level film.
Did you see that other movie she did? God, what was that called? I'm trying to find it right now. She did it. It had Michael Cera in it, and Michael Cera played this like creepy little weird dude.
Magic.
Magic. Yeah.
I never saw it, but I heard about that movie. I've been meaning to watch
that
it.
movie's a total. I don't know how I feel about it. It's just I remember it being really strange, a total mind fuck.
Yeah, I think that was the whole thing with it. Is like it's a super fucking weird movie. I never watched it, but
very strange. She gets naked in it, so if you guys want to see her naked, check it out.
She also gets naked multiple times on Killer Joe.
Killer Joe,
If you'd like to see her naked, watch Killer Joe.
Killer Joe is a fucking weird movie.
The reason why we put Killer Joe on was because in the comments under the movie, someone had written, "I'll never look at a chicken wing the same way again."
How did you feel about Killer Joe?
I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. It was just kind of like super weird. It's
kind of worth watching just to say you watched it.
Right. It's one of those. It's like a cult piece. It's very it's an experience watching that movie.
Matt McConaughey is great in it. He's like perfectly creepy charming.
Right. He has that Matthew McConaughey charm, but it's like the whole time it's like, God, he's a really bad guy.
He's horrible.
Like the worst guy.
It's kind of like, you know what I would compare for those of you that have not seen Killer Joe? It's kind of like Bad Lieutenant.
Okay.
Seen Bad Lieutenant.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of that similar dark.
It's got that gritty, gross feel to it that makes you a little uncomfortable. The characters are pretty fucked up, and even the characters that you're supposed to sympathize with kind of bring all the problems on themselves.
Right. Yeah, like, everybody, it's just got that scummy kind of...
Yeah.
Ugh. You feel dirty after watching it.
Yeah, I was just going to say you're going to need a shower after you watch Killer Joe. And it ends on a really weird note, too. The thing is, it ends on this very, like, Coen Brothers-esque kind of, like... Almost like it's in the middle of a scene and the movie just ends. And so, well, nothing really got resolved here. We just kind of are stopping at this point.
Yeah.
But also, it didn't really seem like it had anywhere else to go at that point either.
No, I was going to say, I don't think Killer Joe had anything more to say.
Yeah, it was really like that. It was a statement, and then it was over.
Yeah. All right, well, I got to go to work early today, guys. So,
and my throat is closing up. I have no idea what's going on with me, but I think this is about all the time I had. I think that was a really good spot to end on, though. Killer Joe, you guys, check it out if you feel a little too happy about life.
If you want to guaranteed way to ruin your mood, watch Killer Joe.
If you feel like you need to have some bad dreams tonight, watch Killer Joe. Mm-hmm. All right. Thanks for joining us on the Back and Bone Show. I'm Keith the Bone Catrone. You can find me at Bone Catrone on Instagram and Facebook.com/Bone Catrone.
ML_intrinsic resistance for all my fitness related materials. Matt Reviews Media for any of my movie, graphic novel, TV series, or podcast reviews.
Thanks again for joining us, guys.